Welcome back to the Stuff About Money podcast. This is Eric, and y'all, I almost had to fly solo today. Xavier is out. It has been insane around here. I don't think it's just my story. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this story, but it is insanely busy. I was last month, I went out of town on a conference, and anytime I'm out, creates more busyness. I come back with COVID, so that, put me out for a little while, and then Xavier and I both had jury duty at the same time. He's still serving. As a matter of fact, I did my time, got selected for a jury. So that was those were grind long days. I'm back in the office, and it occurred to me, my podcast producer saying, "Hey, we need a next episode." And I didn't realize that time had gone by so much. So here I am recording, almost had to fly solo, and I didn't want to sit here and talk to you all alone. So I was thinking, who would be a good person to get on the show with me? So I reached out to my buddy, Mitch Gibson, and he must have nothing better going on because he's like, "Yeah, dude, I can do it." Mitch, what's up?
What's going on, Eric? And yeah, dude, I always, anybody that I have grown to have a pretty close relationship with, if they like, "Hey, dude, let's hop on and talk," or "Let's do this," I'm going to do it. I mean, it's you take care of the people that have taken care of you, and it's the least I can do is hop on a mic for 30
Come on,
minutes.
yeah. He dropped everything. He's like, "Whatever you need, Eric." No, so quick context. Mitch is a fellow podcaster. He podcasts to his audience are young insurance agents. That is not me. I am too old to listen to his podcasts. But he podcasts young insurance agents. We have some crossover. A lot of you know that I work a lot with insurance agencies. My family background is in the insurance space. That's how Mitch and I actually met. We're part of a mastermind group together. And in fact, we were at that conference back in what was last month in April together.
January.
No, we're in January.
April. Oh my gosh, but in January too.
Yeah,
that's where I first met you.
We had known each other from a distance, but we like. I'll be honest with you. We're in the hotel lobby, and you see me, and you're like, "Eric, what's up?" And you come up, and I'm like, "That guy looks familiar to me, but I don't know that I've ever met him." I think I turned to Scott. I'm like, "Scott, who's that guy?" He goes,
"Hal."
Yeah, he goes, "That's Mitch." I'm like, "Oh, that's Mitch." So we've become fast friends. But Mitch, man, I didn't want to be here all alone talking, and people don't want to hear me talk. So I called you because I think you're a good conversationalist. You have no idea. You have zero idea what I'm going to talk about.
I have zero idea. I promise.
Zero idea. So I've been thinking a lot about in the midst of all this busyness of being out of the office and being for various reasons, this idea of margin, building margin in my schedule. That's a philosophy that I try to live by. So basically what I mean by that is building free time in my schedule, not to overload myself, to have time for these things that come up, these contingencies. And right now I'm feeling that I have very little margin right now, having been out of the office. So think of like this idea of margin. This is how I think about it. Like, if you're typing something in Word or on Google Docs, right? You have to print it, and like you have too many words, they don't fit on the page. You can adjust the margins, that white space around the edges. Right. So like if you have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you're really not writing on an 8.5 11 by 11 piece of paper. If you have an inch margin, there's that white space. It's the edges. It's that space around the edges. And that's how I think about my time. I want to keep space around the edges. And we're not talking about time margin or margin in life in this podcast. I want to talk about financial margin. But real quick, I'm curious, when you think of this idea of margin in time, Mitch, like what are your thoughts?
That it should be something that you think about every single day, in preparing for maybe your upcoming weeks, months, years, quarters, whatever it might be, long term as well. Because I struggled a lot, believe it or not, with time management bad, and it wasn't necessarily of getting things done and like having enough time to do it. It was I was doing everything so fast and so rushed that I was giving myself a more wide variety of margin of failure or missing something or messing up, right? I'm very fast and going. So for me, having buffers in between meetings or appointments, or knowing that I'm going to give myself some preparation so I'm not rushed and I have that breath of fresh air, that deep breath prior to starting the show. Does that make sense?
Dude, I mean, you're giving some really good hacks to kind of build margin, like have buffer at a time. So let me read this to you. Let me get your thoughts. Let me get your thoughts on this. It says margin, and I haven't read this book. I don't even know the name of this book. I found this online and it spoke to me. It said, margin is the space between our load and our limits. It is the amount allowed beyond that which is needed. Right. So in the context that I was talking about earlier in a document, it's the edges. I don't need the edges. That's beyond what is needed. It is something held in reserve for contingencies or unanticipated situations. Margin is a gap between rest and exhaustion, the space between breathing freely and suffocating.
I didn't even know that definition, and I kind of sounded halfway smart there.
What you said?
Yeah, that the breathing and the giving yourself that space.
You nailed it.
The true word of buffer. Wow, I feel smart.
Yeah,
today.
yeah. So it goes on. Margin. This is where I think I want to capture really quick, particularly for my business owners out there listening. We the entrepreneurs. We tend to be type A, always go. We want to be successful. We're trying to we want to accomplish stuff. Listen to what he says. He says, margin is the opposite of overload. If we are overloaded, we have no margin. Most people are not quite sure when they pass from margin to overload. Threshold points are not easily measurable and are also different for people, different circumstances. We don't want to be underachievers, so we fill our schedules uncritically. Options are as attractive as they are numerous, and we overbook. So you gave some really good examples, like kind of hacks of building margin, create buffers, create time, prioritize, look at your schedule. Here's though what I want to talk about today, and this idea of margin with your time leads right into it. I want to talk about financial margin. So this is something that I think about often and talk about, and I've never really I don't know where I came across it. I think I came across it just kind of drawing this analogy between time margin to financial margin. And for those of you who are financial people, I'm not talking about profit margin, the difference between, your revenues and expenses. I'm not talking about investment margin, the money that you borrow against or you borrow from a broker to go buy stocks. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, in the same context as this definition here, that space between load and limits, the amount allowed beyond that which is needed. It's building financial margin in our life so we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're overloaded financially. We don't find ourselves in a financial bind. There's some crazy statistic out there that, oh man, most Americans, the 46% Americans are one paycheck away from going into debt. That
I believe it.
That's insane. That's crazy. So margin is something, and I'm continuing to read here. Margin is not something that just happens. You have to fight for it. So whether we're talking about margin in our time or financial margin, it's not something that just happens. It's something that we have to fight for. So if you think about it in the context of fighting for something, you have to be proactive. So I want to talk about 3 ways to build financial margin in your life. What do you think about that?
I'm in.
Let's do it. So this first way, it's kind of like my least favorite, but there's an element of it that's my favorite. All right, I'm just kind of laying that out. It's have access to debt. Right? So debt is kind of like the antithesis of building wealth. And really, this idea of building, of creating margin, part of it is to, the more successful we are at building wealth, the more margin we have in our life, as we're going to talk about here. And debt tends to be the antithesis of wealth. But I always remember growing up, my dad always told me, he goes, son, take really good care of your credit. You need to have good credit so you have access to debt if you ever need it. Right? You ever talk to someone who's like trying to get a loan because they're running out of money and they're like, bro, it's too late. Like,
yep.
your credit's shot and you need banks don't lend people who are hard up for money.
Because they got in that situation in the first place from
Yeah.
something.
So how do you have access to debt? Number one, in this idea of creating financial margin, is if you have debt, if you're paying off debt, you're creating more space to take on more debt in the future if you need to. So if something bad happens, whether you need quick access to cash, you don't have savings, you can maybe get a home equity line of credit or a business line of credit, right? So pay off debt. Less debt you have, more likely you're able to get credit extended to you if you need it. Right? If I pay off my house and I need money, it's like more likely I can get access to my home equity line. So you see, my favorite part is this idea: I don't like debt, so pay it off. And the part that I don't like is, if we can avoid debt, we should avoid debt. I mean, if you're paying somebody, there's a cost to debt. So
Sure.
So number one way of creating financial margin is have access to debt, pay off debt. What are your thoughts? Anything you want to add to that, man? And I know you're not a financial guy. So for the record, Mitch Gibson is not a financial guy.
No, don't call me and ask me because that's not me. But I think that's a good, looking at a young person's perspective, I think it's a great way to put it because it is hammered in our heads a lot, I think, growing up. And, this all goes back to I think they should eliminate certain classes in school and teach more things like we, learn as adults.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit too late. Maybe that's more, we're talking here on the financial standpoint. Because of the way I've always, was always perceived was try not to have any debt. Don't ever get a credit card. Don't ever, but then as you get older and you need that stuff in order to be able to go get a loan for a house or a mortgage for a house or a loan for a vehicle, and you don't have any debt or you've never made any, contributions to show some type of credit, you're
so that's interesting, man.
You better find somebody that
that's
can
interesting.
help.
You're actually coming at it from a different perspective. Like you were taught. That's pretty sound advice. Like, don't get a credit card. Why? There's a reason. Probably, I'm assuming parents taught you that.
Absolutely,
there's a reason.
I mean, you go school below.
Credit card's gonna get you in trouble, right? Credit card debt's the freaking worst, man. I'm gonna go buy a TV from Best Buy for $1,000 and pay for it over 5 years. $1,000 TV that was on sale. It was a really good deal, though. Man, it was Black Friday. It was just a great deal. Like it cost $3,000 for that damn TV because you're paying the minimum on it. It's a terrible deal. Credit card debt's terrible. So like, you seem to have gotten pretty good advice. But what you're saying is you got to establish credit at some point. For a young person, I got to establish credit. How do you do that? Get a credit card. Maybe you have to get a cosigner, right? You might, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. I've got an 18-year-old right now, and that's what we're dealing with right now. Dude, you could almost be my kid.
Don't even
Holy
start.
smokes. Holy smokes.
All
right.
No, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there.
All right. Ways to create financial margin. So here's the second way. Man, this sounds so simple. So simple. All right, you ready for this one? Spend less than you earn. Right? So here's the thing. If you have a household income of $10,000 and it costs you $10,000 to live, to fund your lifestyle, and something happens, right? Does it get real hot where you live? I live in New Orleans, man.
Let's just say water. Let's just say water heater.
Water. AC in New Orleans in August goes out. Your water heater goes out, and all of a sudden you need $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Your transmission goes out in your car. And it costs you $10,000 to live, and you only make $10,000. You don't have much. You don't have much margin there. But if you spend less than you make, you got a little extra scratch, man. At the end of the month, you got something. You got, we call that. Some people call it discretionary income. For some reason, an early mentor of mine, he calls it free cash flow, and that's a business term. And free cash flow is basically after you're done paying everything that needs to be paid, absolutely needs to be paid. How much do you have extra? How much do you have left over? Right. So if it gets bad, it hits the fan, and you need some money real fast, and you have an extra $2,000 a month of discretionary income or free cash, man, you got a little bit of financial margin, right? It's going to take something big to put you out. So spend less. My dad used to say, people have heard me say it. I've had him on the podcast a couple times, and he says it every time. He says, "Son, if you make," I got to do my dad, "Son, son, if you earn $5, he doesn't sound like that at all because he's got an accent. But anyway,
That's awesome.
and I'm not gonna do the accent here. He goes, "Son, if you make $5, spend 3, save 2, right? Spend 3, save 2, right? That creates financial margin." So number one, and if you want to add something, man, feel free to jump in, dude. Don't just.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sure I will here in a minute.
Okay.
Anyways.
All right. So
I've got some internal thoughts.
all right. You're processing.
I'll let him spill here in a
Okay.
second.
All right. So we're paying off debt, creating access to debt if we need it. We're spending less than we earn to free up some income. And the third way is to build up your savings. Right? If I've got a big savings account, I've got a ton of financial margin in my life. The only way to really build up savings, this is kind of tied to number 2. The only way to build up your savings is to spend less than you earn so you have something to save. Now, let me talk about 3 types of savings that I think you need to build up, okay? Number 1, it's your oh crap account, right? That's your emergency fund. Oh crap, the water heater went out. Where am I going to get my money from? Where am I going to get? That's your emergency fund. You don't want to have that invested, right? Because what if your emergency fund's in the stock market and it's been a pretty rough year in the stock market? That's part of the reason why it's been so busy around here. Been a pretty rough year in the stock market. Market's down and you're like, I need money to fix my water heater, but all my money's in the market. I really don't want to sell anything right now because it's just down and I don't want to realize that loss. So your emergency fund should be in cash type stuff, savings account, something that you can access
to where you feel guilty getting it. You've kind of got that. Is that what you mean by that?
Well,
you see
if it's in the market and you have to sell when it's down, that's just a terrible feeling. But if you need access
in general,
if you need access to your money quick, having it in a savings account makes it easy to access. Right? You don't have to sell anything. You don't have to deal with the emotions of, I really don't want to sell anything right now because the market's down. Or, gosh, I really don't want to take my money out the market right now because it's doing well. It's just there, right? I don't want to have any of those thoughts, any of those. It's just, so I got my emergency fund, my oh crap account. Your personal finances determine how much you need in that account. But the point is, that's one place you're going to save money. All right. The second place to build financial margin is in a retirement account. Here's the problem, though. How old are you?
26.
You're 26. So
Yes,
if you
sir.
and I, yes, sir. You don't have to call me sir. Son.
Yes,
Son. You're 26, dude. If I sit here across from you and I'm like, Mitch, in about 40 years, son, you're going to retire. 40 years. Dude, that's almost twice your age. I just lost you in 40 years. But there's a reality that right? You're like, dude, yeah, golly, man. That's all. I mean, financial advisors, that's all we talk about, retirement. You're going to retire one day, Mitch. And young Mitch is going to have to pay for old Mitch. And where's old Mitch going to get that money from? Young Mitch. Right? He's going to get it from young working Mitch.
Bingo.
Young, successful working Mitch. You better start sending money. And there's there's truth to that, right?
A lot of truth.
There's a ton of truth.
If you're looking at it the right way.
Retirement accounts, there's incentives to putting money in retirement accounts. There's tax incentives for it. Depending on the account, you might get a deduction from your current income. You're going to get tax-deferred growth, or you might get tax-free use of that money in retirement later on. So that's a place that you obviously want to start funding. Being as young as you are, that account has a long time to grow. And the most powerful weapon that you have in growing assets is time, right? So the sooner you get money invested, the more time it has to grow. That compounding interest really starts to take effect. So we got emergency funds for your emergencies, retirement funds. That's for old Mitch, okay? But maybe one of my most fun type of accounts?
Most thunder.
Most thunder? Exciting?
Funner.
my most funner type of account. The accounts that really excite me. I call it an independence account or your freedom account. All right, that's just my word. That's not technical. You're not going to find that in IRS codes or in any financial textbook anywhere. But this is where I think you really start to build wealth and financial margin. Because here's the thing. If you build wealth and you have wealth, and there's a difference between wealth and income, right? Income is what you get paid to do what you do. You go out, you work, you get paid. That's your income. You can be rich. You can have a lot of income, but you might not have any wealth. Wealth, that's assets. That's like when it's all said and done, I have all this extra stuff, these assets. It could be cash, it could be a business, it could be property, but that's what we want to do. We want to build wealth, because what wealth does is wealth creates a ton of financial margin because it gives us freedom over our time. Right? If you woke up every year and you knew that because you have these assets or you've built this wealth, and you woke up at the beginning of the year and you know that the wealth that you built is going to generate $50,000 a year for you just because it's working for you, right? Your money is working for you. Your wealth is working for you, creating cash for you. Do you spend your time a little bit differently? Probably. Probably. You're probably going to pursue the things that you enjoy to do the most, right? In your business, you might be saying, like, I got an extra $50,000 coming in because I've been disciplined and built this wealth in this account, and it's generating this cash for me. So, like, you know what? I'm going to hire somebody in my business to do the things that I just don't enjoy doing. That's going to free me up, right? Margin, right? To do what? To pursue.
You know what you did? You just to reiterate this, because I'm assuming that's what you meant by saying that. But the one thing that you didn't say was taking that $50,000, because cash flow's looking nice, and putting it right in his pocket. He went to putting it towards something that's going to allow his business to still continue to generate that revenue or that cash flow in a sense. Yeah. But he's also, the most important piece is the time of that.
Yeah. Freedom. So I might be able to go hire someone for half of that money. I can go hire someone part-time. So now the point is that I'm free. I have the opportunity to do that. So what is this independence account? This independence account, it's not your emergency fund. It's not just sitting in the bank earning, I don't know, you're probably paying the bank. Well, actually, these days it's going up because interest rates are going up. You get a little bit more just money sitting in the bank. But the point is, it's not going to keep up with inflation, right? It's boring. That's money for emergencies. Your retirement account, that's got some strings attached to it, right? Because the government's incentivizing you, so they're going to attach some strings to it. Mitch, if you take this money out before age 59 and a half, 59 and a half, that's a long time for you, dude. Like, your money's tied up. It is tied up. It is held captive for almost 30 years. No.
25 years. 24 years. 28 years. 26.
30, no, geez. 33 years. Yeah, 33 years, dude. You drop money in retirement 33 years. I'm not saying don't put money in a retirement account. You need to. But like 33 years, your money's tied up. So if you wanted some freedom of your time and all your money's in a retirement account, you can't access it. So this independence account, it's money that you have access to that's growing, but it's not tied up in a retirement account. So I've got chickens in my backyard. I think we talked. Yeah, we've talked about it because you have goats, right? We've talked about that. I got goats. Yeah. So you're gonna get this. I've got chickens in my backyard, man. Like I can go out there theoretically. I mean, they get old and they stop laying eggs, but I can go out there every morning and get eggs from my chickens. It's a beautiful thing. Always have breakfast.
And the best eggs.
They're delicious.
You can eat.
They're delicious. The more chickens I have, the more eggs I'll have for breakfast, right? So think of that independence account as those are your chickens, right? The more chickens I have, the bigger my flock of chickens, the more eggs, which is your cash that it could, or the return that has the potential to generate for you. Man, so if I can build up an account that has the ability to generate all these eggs, all this cash for me, that to me is the definition of financial margin. But
I just
go ahead.
I said I just learned one more thing that I didn't know about financial stuff today.
Oh, I thought you were going to say learn about chickens.
No, I knew that about chickens. My parents used to have chickens until they
You're
started
from the
getting
country, huh? Like
ate by the hawks.
you're from the country, right? There's nothing but
If you're
land
gonna,
around here.
I am. That's literally it. Cornfields.
So remember, margin is not something that just happens. You have to fight for it. That's true of our time, and that's true of our money. Like, you're not just going to wake up with financial margin. You're not just going to wake up having financial wealth. It's something that you have to fight for. And you opened, perfectly by saying this idea of planning out, prioritizing, looking ahead for the quarter, for the month, for the year, or month, quarter, year. There's some intentionality. That's fighting for it. So here's why it's important to build financial margin in your life. One, you are going to get older. You might not want to. Right now, you have the energy and the grind. You're going to grind it out, and you're going to build Mitch Gibson empire. This kid's going some places, people. He's going places. All right.
I hope
But
so.
it's going to get to a point where, like, man, I'm tired of grinding it out. Maybe I just want to focus on the things that are super important to me. And I think that's pretty typical. And as we age, I remember when I was a young advisor, I would meet these guys that were probably my age and a little bit older, and they would tell me like the stuff that they focus on, and I'm like, you don't do this, you pay someone to do that, like, dude, like, why would you even do that? It's really easy to do. And I had like all this energy, and I could do everything on my own. Then I realized one day, like, I don't want to do this part of the business. I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy this part of the business. I want to give it to somebody else. But I built financial margin into my business, that free cash flow, to say, you know what, I have the margin to, in the business sense, specific to business, hire someone to do these tasks. I can sacrifice some money because I have the margin to hire someone to do these things that I don't enjoy, to do the things that I enjoy. And man, when I'm doing things that I enjoy, guess what happens? Business grows. So I would say,
and life is a hell of a lot happier.
a ton happier. Hey, look,
I think if I could, and if the reason why I'm saying the happier piece is because I truly, especially, I'm going to speak to the young people for a second, younger agents. And like I said, I'm probably going to use a lot of relatable terms on the insurance side or sports side here, nothing to do with financial. But as a young agent, I was told, and I'm glad I was told this, I was told to give it 3 years. Give the industry 3 years and then decide if it's what you like. And if you don't like it, try something different within it or get out and do something else, right? Well, the reason why those 3 years, or they say that, and why they think they're so miserable, and it might have been different for me having young kids, a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old now. So being 21, 22 years old and having a couple of kids, the no matter how much money you make, those margins are going to be a lot more slim as you continue to evolve as an agent. I'm getting to the point now where I'm finally seeing that return on investment, but it was the constant thought in my mind of being very impatient and understanding to trust the process of what the insurance, what my book of business is going to continuously do for me day in and day out moving forward. Yeah. It's going to take a little bit to build that, right? But once you do, it relieves it doesn't relieve the stress, I would say, but it makes you relieve that tick off of your back, because you then feel happy because you've done nothing but bust your butt, and you're seeing the ROI on a financial standpoint. That people are way too impatient and get into it for a year and then dip out.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And for people listening who are like, man, what's Mitch talking about, like in the insurance space, but like any business, right? If you start any business, like you're gonna have to grind. You have to pay your dues. You're gonna have to grind it out. Like you can not even start a business. You can just be a regular, W-2 employee working at a place, and you want to move up. You still got to walk in it, and you still got to pay your dues. But I think what you're talking about is kind of from the business standpoint, is for the business owners and entrepreneurs, your margin is real slim. You got to grind it out, and that's part of it. You know, sometimes you have to put the time in. Right, like right now, right now, I have very little margin in my time. I got to put the time in.
Same, right?
But when you're intentional and you fight for it, and I think part of this is a mindset, especially for the younger people out there, or the people who are like, maybe you're not younger, maybe you're like me. You know, I never really took time to build this idea of financial margin. Like it's tight. I don't have much in savings. I have debt. I'm spending as much as I earn. Like it's a mindset. It starts with, hey, I've got to start thinking a certain way. And once you start thinking a certain way, your actions, it's a lot easier for your actions to follow and to have long-term lasting impact. You can grind it out. You can do anything for a short period of time, right? But if you change your mindset, then you could do something for a long time, if that makes sense. It's like,
I would agree. What would you say, like, so if you had the option, so for example, I know depending on how insurance agencies structure themselves, or even other businesses structure themselves, say your business is going to pay for a 401k, it's going to contribute to that 401k. They're going to match it up to the limit, and it's a good deal, whatever it might be. That was the first thing I did here, and continue to do that. Would you say for someone just starting out in a career that, and it may be a trick question, is that more of importance? Is that more of an importance to do that, or have a savings account?
Oh man!
So instead of getting that extra $75 out of my check and putting it towards that, or my $125, take that $125, put it somewhere else, and take half of that. What would you suggest for someone that's where they can establish the retirement piece, but also have that? Would you call them your what clients?
My what clients?
You called them something specific. You have your independent. Your independent
planning clients?
Daggone it. No, you were just talking about it a minute ago.
Man.
Whatever it was.
I don't know.
It would have been.
How much? An investment client? I don't know. But I know what your question is. So like, I'm young, I'm starting off, whether you own your own business or you're working for a company and there's a 401k, is it better for me to put money away for the old Mitch or the old person that I'm going to be? Or should I use that money to do something else right now? Save, build up a savings account, build up an emergency account. There's a reason personal finances is called personal, because I think everyone's situation is going to be different. I will say this, though, as a general rule of thumb, if there's a match, take the free money. Take the free money. If an employer is willing to match you 3% of your salary, and you put 3% in, they give you 3%. Like, that is really the only investment that I can sit here and look you in the eye and say, Mitch, your money will double overnight. If you put 3%, you're going to have 3% by your employer. You literally doubled your money. So if there's a match,
that just made me feel a little bit better.
There's a match, take the match. Now, do you have a lot of debt? What are your interest rates on the debt? Do you have money available in the event of an emergency? Maybe there's maybe your financial plan is you're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and there's a point in time where you start doing more of this and less of that. But generally speaking, to your question, if someone's giving you free money, man, take it. Take the free money. Take the free money, 100%. So,
good. Okay, I figured that was where you're going. I mean, and just in general, I mean, you hear something from this guy, you hear something from that guy, you hear something from this gal, whoever it is, and you almost have that conception of, well, should I do what that person's doing too? But there could also be having they might have a different situation in front of their face. So that's why I think, like, you gave me some great advice the other day.
I've got an episode called Who Are You Taking Your Financial Cues From? And it's just that, right? We watch different people and we take cues from different people, but we don't know the backstory. We know nothing. They're doing X with their money, so we want to do X with our money, but they don't have the same debt that we have. They don't have the same expenses that we have. They're making a lot more money than us or less money than us. And so we have to be very careful who we take financial cues from.
Yeah.
So were you going to say something? I felt like you had something.
Yeah, but I forgot. I forget what it was. My laptop about died, so I would have been in very, very big trouble if my laptop died in the middle of this show.
We're wrapping up here. So
So I forgot about it, but if it pops up,
Too young.
I'll think about it. Man, that's gonna frustrate the crap out of me. What you were talking about, you have your money for 80-year-old Mitch.
Your retirement account, your emergency fund,
your-
and your freedom account or independent account. Is that it?
There it was, independent account. That's
Independence.
it. That's what I'm talking
Freedom,
about.
liberty.
There you go.
Right? Liberty, right? Because what does financial margin give us? What does having savings give us? What does wealth give us? Independence, freedom of our time. Isn't that what we all want? And I'm not one of these people who thinks that, you should save a bunch of money so you can stop working and just have recreation all the time. I think there's purpose to work. I think that anytime, if we have a skill, we should look to use that skill set. I think it's purposeful. And when people stop, whether you make money or not, use it. And the building wealth gives us the freedom to say, you know what? I'm really tired of grinding it out 45, 50 hours, a week. I really like what I do, but I think I'm going to go work. I might just go take a job part-time. Like my dad's semi-retired. He's practically retired. He loves the insurance business. He works in our insurance agency, and he does what he loves talking to people. So he gets on the phone and says, "Hey, Mitch, so this is what he loves to do. Most people hate this, and this is, I think, why he's so successful. Hey, Mitch, I just want to tell you, man, your insurance went up like 25%. Like, he has those conversations with people, and he loves it, and he serves people well, and it's purposeful. But he's got financial margin. He's in a position where, you know what? I don't have to go and grind it out and sell and create the same type of revenue that I was when I was younger. So financial margin is about building wealth. It's about building financial security. And it's not something that just happens. You have to fight for it.
I think that's exactly where I was kind of trying to lead you before my ADHD mind got off was, the whole giving it 3 years, you've got to fight to want to see that reap of reward.
Yeah.
It might take you getting knocked down on the ground before you decide to start thinking, but I would highly advise you coming for someone who was down at that level 3 years ago. Don't wait.
That's it. It was about financial cues. We're talking about financial cues. Yes. We're talking about. You learned some. I gave you some good advice apparently recently. That's what it was. Don't wait until yesterday to start thinking about your future, because you should have your plan in place prior to making those financial decisions. And if you don't know what you want in the future, you don't personal
have
vision versus business vision.
Your personal vision, correct?
Yeah.
And your personal vision does not add up with what your current state of mind or what your current state of work is, and whatever it is that you're doing. Yep. I mean, you got to figure that out, or nothing's.
So here's context to that for y'all listening, wondering what Mitch is talking about. So this was specific in the business sense, but I think this can apply to most people. That if you're building a business or starting a business, most business owners will create a business vision. And there's this idea that if we have our own business, we have got freedom, and we've got, we've as a business owners, we have freedom over our time. But the reality is we don't necessarily. What's really important is that before you create your business vision, you should create your personal vision. What do I want? I'm creating a business because I want to have the freedom of my time. Then when you go back and build your business model better align with that personal vision of having freedom of time. So what does that look like? Having a staff, right? Using technology to create margin of time, leveraging certain resources or certain tools that are going to allow you to have more freedom of your time. Whatever your personal vision is, your business model should support that. So that's good, man. Any closing thoughts on financial margin? Is there one thing that you heard, like, man, that was, dude, I'm putting that in my front pocket because I don't want anyone to take it from me.
I'd say for sure, making those, whether that's a financial margin or whether that's personal margin, making sure that those are a priority, and especially as you get older, you grow, and those, depending on where you have your financial, where you want those, or where you might have those margins, is just don't forget about those things, because things could change, and you might need to figure out where those, maybe you need to take money and put it in this way or somewhere else. You need to move it this place because of specific your reasons of needing those margins have changed. I mean, as you change, the businesses change, everything changes. Yeah. So as you evolve, pay close attention to your investments, whether it's liquid or just, like you said, an IRA or a 401k, whatever it is. Make sure that you're having those conversations, I guess, because I'm one that's the last 4 years have just let mine go. I haven't.
Look at you, man.
It's not good.
Look at you talking all financially. I like that.
It's not good.
I like that.
So, but that's what I've learned from talking to you, especially the last couple of weeks. Just having talks.
Mitch, I'm incredibly thankful that you have nothing better going on today than to chat with me. No, you're
makes you feel any better. I got to pick up my
Mitch
kids.
is a busy dude. Mitch is a busy dude, y'all. But you have margin in your space, and I called you up and said, dude, what are you doing this afternoon? I don't want to talk alone on a microphone. And you're like, let's hop on in a couple hours. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your time. Thanks for making this more interesting. Y'all fight for financial margin.